Okay.
The words I have to say may well be simple, but there's nothing more that we can do. Love is the open door. Love is what we came here for. No one could offer you more. Do you know what I mean? At your eyes really say it's very hard to be behind the light when there's no other way. Now it's really up to you. Love is the key we must turn. Truth is the flame we must burn. Freedom the lesson we must learn. You know what your eyes really see.
So, welcome. Thank you for being here and showing interest in celebrating Arno's life. This is a real honor for me to offer this and to share space with you. I'm curious as we begin, how many of you have either met Arno, been to one of his talks, or read his books? So yeah, a couple of us have read his books. I just want to impart upon you that each one of you, through our work together, you've been touched by him. It's probably the greatest influence on my life, and has greatly impressed upon me what it takes to be an extraordinary chiropractor, and even before that, a human being. And so, yeah, tonight we had this. Today we had this talk planned. We create a calendar every year, and we had this talk called "The Power of Intention." And we planned that out about 8 months ago. And as we were flipping the calendar, we came, "What are we going to do for that talk?" And it just so happened that the name was, well, this is the perfect cross-mingling of the power of intention and a tribute to Arno. And so today is a celebration of his life, and I want to share with you some of my own personal stories with him and some of his background. And I hope through this, impress upon you just a bit of the preciousness of life and the bigness of life. And so here we are. It's great. So Here's Arno, um, just a charismatic man, beautiful smile, and what a privilege. It was so much fun to get to roam the earth with them. Uh, Wherever he went, he had this like ginormous smile, and he was out to make friends with like everybody he came across. Uh, and it was just so much fun to be with. One of our well, it was my last time I got to meet him. Heather and I went down to Loretto Bay, in the Bach, where him and his wife Jane, they have a beautiful home, a villa uh, in this area that's kind of like gated. And we would go in and out of this community once a day, kind of thing. And there was a security guard, a person that would kind of be manning. There was a highly protected, but it was protected area. There was a guard there. And as he would leave the compound, he would insist on stop and talking to the security guard. And it was like, he was like, what's your name? And you remember his name? How's your family? And this is all in broken Spanish, of course, right? He insisted on speaking Spanish to them. I mean, sometimes I'll do that where I'm making a new friend, right? And it's kind of like I get their name and I say hi and make contact and then we're off. But no, with Arnold, I mean, it was a 5-minute pause. It really was. And he would just like be there and just pouring love into them. And we get to the other side. And I would just make a comment about, just how beautiful that experience was. And he paused and he said, Norm, when I look at my life to that person's life, I didn't get the choice to be born in a family and with privileges that I did. And, a lot of these folks are, in a very different situation than we're at. They just don't have the opportunities. This security guard is working all day for probably $20. And I kind of took from that experience, I think the interaction was the highlight of the day for the security guard too. It was just so beautiful of an exchange. So the other thing that as we're bringing up this slide here, as I was sharing with our community about Arno, one of the things that people kind of first asked me, and I think it's part of our culture, that, well, how old was he? Right? That was one of the first questions I would get asked. And he was 72 when he passed, 73 when he passed, pardon me. And the years are what matter. Is what he did with those years. Right? It was the time, the dash in the middle there. That was most important. And then I think we get too hung up on kind of the length of one's life, and we really need to bring focus to the quality of one's life. And boy, he packed many lifetimes into one go round, with just his impact. We saw much of the world, had such a great time. And so let's walk through this here, Beth. All right, nothing is bigger than life. Fantastic picture. Of course, that's the back of Arno's head. This really was the message. It was a message bigger than chiropractic. It was really about the bigness of life, the profound bigness of life. And, within that story is, what a miracle life is, truly. When you stop and consider all that it takes for this to function, wow, truly. For two cells to come together when your mom and dad made love, and that spark of life, right? And for those two cells that have the intelligence to unite and then to form and duplicate and then organize in a manner to create a functional human being. Are you kidding me? And really, the body's physiology is just a small fraction of the intelligence of life, because within that there's this conscious mind, this conscious being, this conscious you who gets to witness, who gets to experience action, meaning, who get to consider the past and the future. I mean, how incredible. And we get this journey of life. And within the story, the bigness of life, he also impressed upon us the power of one life, the power of Martin Luther King, of Gandhi. And I'd say the power of Arno Burnier as well. And also the power that you have, that I have, with our life to make a difference. Love is my religion. Nature is my church. Trust is my faith. Love is my sword. And surrender is my mantra. And I love the picture, with Arno and a bird there with them. He was one with nature. He would share stories with us. His home in Colorado was a beautiful home with large floor-to-ceiling windows. And there's a time in the day when the sun would be glistening off the window and the birds weren't able to pick up their glass. And you'd hear the thud. And when you hear the thud, you go running out and find the bird. Pick up the bird. Assess the bird. Find where the subluxation was. Adjust the bird. Hold the bird. And then the bird would come back to life with fly. Truly amazing. And the stories that he's sharing with us as students just impressed upon us, right? The power that we had within our own hands as chiropractors. Within my own practice, my first practice, which was downtown in Fitzwilliam Gate, it too had large windows, right? And sure enough, right? Bird thud, middle of adjusting everybody. Said, now what am I going to do? The bird needs my help. So as a good student, I run down, pick up the bird, and and it's amazing when you trust yourself and your skills and how it's there for you. And just offer a little bit of intuition. Obviously, adjusting a bird's spine is a little bit different than adjusting your folks' spine, but the intention is the same. The caring is the same, right? And there's a life force within all. And then when you connect to it, it's real, it's palpable. Right? And I've had the privilege of adjusting chickens and birds and dogs and pigs and cats. Okay. I've had the opportunity of attending a number of celebrations of my life myself, and some folks I never got to meet before. And I'll say that in each case, I walked away with just a greater reverence for life, just an opportunity to meet that soul. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to meet Arno and some of his younger days here. We have a short video that we're going to play for you. This beautiful being.
things coming home. No facts will find us so far. You are true. You have to live. Every single time. Thinking through the day. Did you stop it all the time? That's it. Now why you come over? Or have you just to get it done? I live my life without break. You now believe. I didn't get to say goodbye. Day before the day. Was trying to get to a work on time.
So just a quick flip there for you. What a beautiful smile. Wow. It's really amazing. And so his journey, was a journey of healing and transformation. He certainly was a wounded human. He came from, a water background. He was born in France to a middle-class family who, at that time, they really strived to be very polite and most adequate. And so their home was very pristine and formal. During his early days, Arno, inside of France, if you could imagine, had a whole zoo of pets, including like um, birds and dogs and cats, and I believe even like sheep at one point. I mean, it was just truly outrageous that he'd have to take up the stairs to his home and care for, and then take on their road trips as well. He was just a giant heart that cared for all, not just the mankind, but also the animal world too. Um, and his family certainly had some challenges. He wrote deeply personal in his books, which I encourage you all to read. But within his family, his sister was quite awfully sexually abused for quite a period of time, and Arno himself was used as an altar boy too, which really, was tough for him and for him to feel the pain that his sister had gone through. And those wounds, boy, at the same time, they also became his gifts, in that it deeply created his compassion for mankind. Um, and I mean, my goodness, during our time in our workshops together, he had done this work. Holy cow. He would connect so deeply to his wounds and emote in front of all of us. I've never seen a leader, somebody who was capable of standing on a stage in front of thousands of people, be willing to rip himself raw and be completely human and vulnerable at the same time. It was such a rare gift. So later on in his early 20s, he was always very intelligent. He at one point wanted to go to medical school. He was a second-year medical student in the Rene went to his school of medicine. And it was at that time he was racing motorbikes on the weekends, and I think he was like stealing motorcycle parts and all that stuff. He was really into motorcycle gangs and doing that deal. And that's when he had his motorcycle on purpose, which is the next slide for that. And here we go. Well, she never called it a crash. It was always on purpose. Now, at the time when it happened, he might have seen it as a crash because he was quite seriously injured. And it left him quite incapacitated for a period afterwards. He had a lot of neurological issues in his legs and his back in the crash. It was really starting to interfere with his studies as well. And, you know, he went to the medical specialist and they really didn't have a solution for him. And then finally somebody said, hey, why don't you try going to a chiropractor? And at the time in France is a very different legal system than we do here in Canada. If I can get this right. In Canada, you know, the laws are written to define what's illegal. In France, the laws are written to define our laws are written to define what's illegal, right? And then in France, their laws are written to define what's legal. So if there's no law to define it, it's illegal. And chiropractic at that time in the 1960s, it wasn't defined. So it was actually illegal at that time. And so he went to Jean Beliveau, who was his chiropractor that he was introduced to, and he had to knock at the front door and ring, and it was all very closed, and they asked him who he was, and he kind of had to whisper through the wall, and you know, they'd come down and make sure he was who he was saying he was, right? It was all it was very leading edge at that time. And during that first meeting with Dr. Jean, he sat down. And of course, Arno had been in medical school, so he knew all the proper terminology and was describing symptomatology, neurology associated with it. He was thought it really impressed this man. And John just sat back, listened, and he listened, and then listened. And then when it came time for him to respond, he just simply said, you know, I can't address what is wrong with you. However, I can address what is right in you. You can't fight the darkness. You must turn on the light. You cannot fight disease. You must turn on the light. And he said it in such a powerful, succinct way. In that moment, Arno's life was, whoa, transformed. He awoke to a different paradigm of health, of healing. And it created a spark within him. After getting adjusted, and a few weeks later, his symptoms going away, and then his eyes opening up to the bigness of health. He was quite confronted at the time. He was following around the residents in the hospital, and he felt it was odd that they were doing surgery for men with throat cancer, right? And then the man would go out into outside after the surgery, and he was smoking right through his new bowl and his throat, and he just said, there's something wrong here with this paradigm. There's another route. And so chiropractic became that vehicle for him. And so he asked John, okay, so then where do I go to school? You know, I want to become a chiropractor. And so John said, well, you've got to go to the States. South Carolina, this is the school to go to, Sherman College. And so Arno just went for it. And I mean, Arno is a free spirit, was a free spirit, he's even more of a free spirit now. And he trusts. I mean, trust was his mantra, right? That was it. Trust. And so he knew this was his calling, jumped on a plane, flew off to South Carolina. He arrived in Carolina with like less than $10 in his pocket. knowing about 4 or 5 English words. Those words he learned from the Beatles, right? And then he gets there and he's got a phone number written down on a piece of paper, right? And so he's got to kind of coordinate how to phone this phone number and whatnot. So he kind of through translation and the universal sign language, somebody's able to help him phone this phone number. And then they have a translator who's able to talk to the person on the other end. He didn't realize he was phoning Reggie Gold, who was one of the most influential chiropractors of the time. And so through that, Reggie then came and picked him up at the airport and whisked him off. And Reggie was a running man. He was pretty awesome. Arno tells the story being picked up in this really flashy Maserati, right? And Reggie like zip him out of the airport and getting the back tails out on the side of the ditch and go doing spinning the tires all around the exit, right? And shortly thereafter, Arno realized that there was actually no school yet. There was actually just a vision for a school. Oh. So you can imagine arriving in a new country, not really knowing much, not knowing English, having very little money in your pocket, arriving to a school that's really just a vision for a school. But it was perfect in that the school really invited the students to build the school with them. So he was a pioneer class, and he had the privilege of studying not only with Reggie Gold, but with Scott Friedman, and Joe Felicia, and a whole list of people who were like the creme de la creme of chiropractors in a small group, and they trained and they got the principle drilled into them. It was such a unique environment, right? And so that was his upbringing. Trust, taking risks, right? Honoring his calling. And then he just went for it. And life just provided. It really did. It provided for him. And so here's Pioneer class. Yeah, fantastic. So at this time, chiropractic is a regulated profession, right? And unfortunately, this college hadn't got its regulations yet. It hadn't been officiated as a, so taught the students how to become a chiropractor, but Arno Burnier gradually never had an actual a registration because the school wasn't accredited. They actually practiced his career without a formal registration, which was the level of trust that he operated on. Truly amazing. Here's Reggie here on the bottom right on this one here. And Jim Dubell as well. And Jim went on to form the New Beginnings group in New Jersey. Arno practiced, I believe it was around 20 years in private practice, had a very successful practice. Man, he was committed to service. That was his MO was service, long hours in the clinic. It wasn't a clinic, in a center, serving people. And then on the weekends, he would be off at workshop, teaching workshop. And, and then his career grew to teaching more and more. And let's go through this for a bit. Cool. Arno was always a spark plug. He was there at the start, right? And some of you might recognize this folk. I know Don does. Don's been actually able to go and meet the man over here. This is Donald Epstein, which, along with Arno, Donnie has been, equally as impressionable on my life as a teacher, mentor. And they really were mavericks at the time. They were creating something that was just not there before, right? They were embarking on a journey. And here, this is Donnie and Jackie, his wife Jackie. Donnie, his wife Jackie, in Arno's home getting married, and that's Arno marrying the two. And so this is just how Arno rolled, was that he found himself into and it wasn't funny. He was um, asked in so many times. He married a number of chiropractors. And of course, he wasn't a priest, but he was a sacred being for sure. This is years later at a gate that I had the opportunity of attending. Arno, and this is his beautiful wife, Jane. Oh my God, I love her so much. And so much too. And I think she probably knows me better than anybody else on the planet. No offense, Evelyn, but
And Dakin, she's an amazing person.
really amazing. Yeah. Okay, and so then I'm gonna lead myself in through this. So this is a third year chiropractic school, young Norm to tell you, I was like bright-eyed and so eager. And when I met the principles of chiropractic, it was a rebirth for me. I mean, I don't know how to impress it upon you other than like some religious connotation, but it really was. It was just a spiritual, like, holy cow, my life is this. I'm asked to be a servant of man, and chiropractic is my vocation. This is so cool. And I just got lit. I was so excited and enthused. I still am, of course. And I think back then I probably was about 10 times more. Yeah, but I mean, it was just so exciting. And as a student, I had the opportunity of being the president of our philosophy club, the Friends in Chiropractic group. And we would go around to different workshops and seminars, and we would connect the students to different chiropractors. And so I had the opportunity of going to one in Toronto, and I was there representing a group. And it just so happened that Arno was there speaking. It was actually, I think it was his first time in Toronto speaking. And at that point, he really didn't have a liaison within CNCC, or Canadian Chiropractic College. So he's kind of like watching out as far as, who's the passionate students here, and he connected with me. And we're just like, wow, you did my whole life, it's so great to meet and to connect with him. And that opened a door that just totally transformed my life. So we connected, and then there was an invitation to go down to his masterpiece training camp, which I'm featured here. This is a manual that we were given at the workshop, and it wasn't a workshop. It was a training, 6-day intensive. It was part Navy SEAL training. It was part like emotional, mental, deep dive, expose your core wounds vulnerably in a group of 100 people at the microphone, led by this incredibly vulnerable, compassionate man who was walking right through it with us at the stage, crying with us as he bared his soul with us. Okay. It was part chiropractic training. We would spend 3-4 hours a day just practicing and adjusting skills and warming our muscles up. And we'd start the morning, we'd wake up at 5 to be out on the front lawn at 5:30 to go and do push-ups and sit-ups and training, burpees, and the whole bit. I mean, it was physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And he had a game plan with it, that he was going to challenge us physically. And what happens if you really exert yourself physically, it starts to kind of peel back the layers, and you can get into the emotional crevices, right? And then that bubbles up, and then we were able to purge at the microphone and see other people go through the same and share their stories. And oh my God, your story's like mine. I thought I was the only one. Wow, we're all wounded. How cool is that? Cool, that is true. Right? And then the mental, wow, we were learning so many phenomenal things about the body, about life, about health. So we were being infused these phenomenal insights and understandings. What's that?
Oh, I was gonna ask Dawn to just make sure that door was shut.
Okay.
Okay.
And then what would happen as we did this work over the course of the 6 days, from 5 in the morning until about midnight. And we were getting adjusted, and we were crying and hugging and loving each other. That eventually it's at some point up. And it became this spiritual orgasm, if you will. Okay. In that it just erupted into this most spiritual connection that, I mean, I really can't explain it to you. That's okay. Just take care of it. Thanks. And so what happens when we kind of peel back our layers and get vulnerable, then we're left with our essence, which is really spiritual beings. And that's what presented itself. And I got to experience, I got to participate and to feel phenomenon, energetic experiences that I thought might only be accessible through ayahuasca or acid, but it is as real and as attainable when you do your work as a human being to experience just through the connection of a hug or through an adjustment. Okay. Truly profound. So we have a short clip here that's going to give you a sense of Arno's presence and also the commitment that we had in this training camp and how he was really training us to be the upper echelons of chiropractors.
Don't know if I can make it any bigger.
Yeah, I don't know if you can either.
As a family of humans, we definitely need an awakening. My vision has been to elevate human consciousness in matter of life, health, healing, wellness, and well-being. Your state of being is paramount. Your state of being is primordial to what goes on in your office. It's not a technique. It's an approach to adjusting. So if you're a perceptible person, you can benefit enormously from going to MLS. If you're a Gonstead practitioner, you can apply all the principles of MLS into Gonstead. If you're full spine, whatever way you want to adjust, you can apply it. Even if you do experimentation, you can still apply it by knowing how to read a human being, and how to connect with a human being, how to visualize what is going on inside, and be more precise with your instrument. So it's an approach to adjusting. And that being said, everything that we teach is designed to train you. And when you start to move into MLS2, to be more artful, playful, and eventually to let it all go as a family of humans.
So MLS adjusting seminars, which originally stood for making love to the spine. And how he was communicating to us, he's, care for this as though you were on the first date with your beloved, right? And how you would, be so, and just to start with a hand contact and eye contact and really connect and breathe with the person, right? And then to gradually take the next step and to build a rapport. And, I need to impress upon you, that was the exact opposite of what I was being taught at school. What I was being taught at school was first visit, hey, get into the gown, and let's look at you, and it's like ask a whole bunch of violating questions, and then lie down and crunch, and hit them as hard as you can, and whichever one pops is good. True. Okay. And so for me, as a high sensitive, compassionate which track are you gonna take? Right? They love to be spun. Absolutely. And so I started to go to school less, and I started to go to training with Arno more. And it was the best decision I could have made. I learned chiropractic from Arno and from his training camps, and I have my chiropractic college to thank me for demonstrating contrast in how not to approach people as a chiropractor. And it really created greater impulse to follow Arno and appreciation for what Arno and Donna was teaching us as well. So making love to the spine. It later was rebranded to Mastery, Love, and Service. Okay. And for Arno, mastery was the path of mastery. It was never a destination. There was no master. It was not looked, he did not want to be seen as the master. That was not what it was about. It was more about creating an environment, a discipline of mastery. And he said it so well there. He said it starts with your being. Your being. Right? And we can just bring it forward. Who you are as a human being precedes who you are as a chiropractor. Ooh, I gotta tell you, putting together today's offering for you has been so insightful and reflective for me. And I appreciate now more than ever the wisdom the man was offering me. How true is that, right? Who you are as a human being precedes who you are. There's a lot of chiropractors out there who I shouldn't say that, but this is just a great moment. And then the other piece we talked about was the be, do, have. And as we take time and we're talking about the power of intention, I think in our modern world, the power of intention and the law of attraction has been quite popularized. And I think the starting point with a lot of influencers is around starting with the have. What do you want to get? And then what do you need to do to get that? Right? And then who do you need to be? And Arno said, no, flip that around. It starts with who you're being. That's paramount. That's the first step, is your beingness. Right? I mean, how is it before we even touch our hands with the spine? I still do it today. Ground, center, just calming the thought, be present with that one, and then drop into our hearts. And when we do workshop with them, that was often the first hour or two of the weekend workshop. And we just take on that part alone, and grounding, centering our mind, and then getting into our heart space. And it's only now I'm watching like films like Dr. Joe Dispenza and whatnot. He's speaking about brain coherence. I was like, Arno was leading us there at that time, right? And how important that we as healers are in the right mindset and the right energetic set as we're doing our work with you. And so he would just train that over and over and over for us. Inside the binder was full of quotes. So along from between, waking up at 5 and going to bed at like midnight, then you're asked to take time with these binders and read through and memorize the quotes, right? And the quotes, some of them weren't easy either. The simplicity of total trust is one of the most powerful forces in the world. I mean, just that alone could run your life on, really. Total trust. Yeah, I mean, we get it on some level, but then to really live your life from there, like from flying from Paris, France to Spartanburg, South Carolina, right? In trust that this is your path. And there was no mistakes. He didn't show up 3 months early, right? Because, I got here early, the school's not about, he got there in perfect time. Because it allowed him to meet his classmates and his teachers and get settled and learn English. That's important too. If we want to be an instrument of healing, our attachment to the outcome has to be zilch. Absolutely nil, zero, the big zip. Okay. This is important for the healer. It's also important for for all of us, right? And how attached we become to the outcome. Well, what happens then is our mind is hooked onto that outcome and we're wrestling with what is. Whereas if we can be in a place of acceptance, that's where possibility lives, is in acceptance. And then we do the work from there and we just let it go and we give it over. That's where the magic can come in there. Right? That's when I'm at my best with you folks. I just let you go. Right? I don't necessarily need to hear, oh, my headache got bad. I don't need to hear that. Right? And then, oh, I did my job right. Oh, yeah, I did. No, that's not where I need to go. Right? Awesome. The successful 21st century chiropractors will be spiritual leaders. If you could imagine in 2001 at 20 years old reading that as a chiropractic student, that's a calling. Yeah. Bless the pain for it will bear its perfect fruit in perfect time. We spent hours on this piece in our workshop. You know, the pain, whether it's physical or emotional pain, bless the pain for it will bear its perfect fruit in perfect time. You see some wisdom in that? Yeah, right. How often when we're in pain, we're trying to get out of it, right? We're trying to fix it, or it's like, no, bless it. There's wisdom there for you. I know looking back in my life, some of the hardest, most painful times have also been the most informative, the times when I've grown the most as a human being. And I maybe wasn't so astute to see that at the time, but I am now looking back at it. I can look at it and go, oh, thank you, thank you, challenge. Another one that I love was when we speak the words that further the silence. And I mean, he was so intentional with his words. There was no just loose flapping with his words. It was like every word was intentional, right? And it meant his words were meant to be said and then to drop into stillness and for you to go, right? He didn't need to fill it with a whole bunch more. He just wanted to say his bit and then drop it. Right? Just as Jean Beliveau did when he said those 3 lines to him, right? I can't address what's wrong with you. I can only address what's right in you. You can't fight the darkness. You must turn on the light. You cannot fight disease. You must turn on the light. And then John just sat back and was still. I think that's great wisdom for all of us in our lives. You know, when you've got something good to say it and believe it. Shut up. Oh, and we had some fun. We had some fun. So I had the privilege. I went to a total of, I think, 5 different training camps with him. 3 of them I got to volunteer at, and 1 I actually got to speak at. And the one that I spoke at, well, and I got to offer kind of the music at too, which was a real gift. Arno he was so keen at creating emotional overlays within the workshop, and he would play songs over and over and over again just to create this entrainment, right? The Elton John song that we started with, that was a huge piece. Shine, Huey Love, Shine. Okay. And so, we have a blue blanket around.
It's probably under Jade.
Great. Okay. So, around of the 6 days around like day 4 or 5, that's when things would really start to open up and we'd have fun and the spiritualness of it would really take over. And so on this particular event, and we were sworn to secrecy that we'd never speak about what happened at camp, at stated camp. And now that this is transition, we're sharing some of the inner details, so you're privy to hear this. So the one in St. Catherine's was handling the music, and then we had this break, and somehow I got talked into, like we've been watching beautiful Sade up on stage, right? And so then they had the great idea that they would dress me up as Sade, right? So if you can imagine, of course I was shirtless, but and I was wrapped up in this, my white gown, right? And so I'm dressed in my white gown. It was just bed sheet, right? And then can you bring up the music for us too? So
Sure.
I'm standing up on stage as the 100 participants are coming back into the room, right? And the song is playing. And I'm up the microphone. And so the back of the room was Arno. And he was watching what Sade was. And he was mirroring that. And then I'm mirroring Arno, right? They're projecting Sade on me. And everybody is like watching me as I'm going into this perfect choreographed move for move of all Sade's country moves. It's just truly hysterical. And I mean, it's fun for me as I'm getting to dance with my mentors. It's like, it's crazy dance. Oh, yes. It's play. All right. Yeah, a visionary who transformed chiropractic lives. He had the opportunity to go to numerous missionary trips where we take chiropractic to other countries. Brazil, we went to Brazil numerous times. One of the trips, he had the opportunity of spending most of the days in an orphanage, adjusting the children there. And there's pictures him working with a child that's maybe this big in an orphanage. Oh my goodness, right? And just day after day after day of adjusting his children. And he shared stories of how he would just get in just this incredible mode where it wasn't coming from him, but through him, which I get to experience in this room too. I know you have, Marilyn, an experience that too, right? When your best is coming through you, right? It's not coming from you, right? And as chiropractors, it's real precious state as human beings, where we're able to tap into a force that's bigger than ourselves, right? And then we're in sync with this larger flow. Right? And he would share stories of being in the heat, adjusting these hundreds of kids all day, and then he'd have the thought, "Oh, I need a drink," right? And as he had the thought, somebody would appear with the drink to him, right? And I mean, it would just, when I'd have the opportunity of hanging out with Arno, it was one synchronicity after another, hyper synchronicities. You all have experienced synchronicity in your life? Yeah. Have you ever had like days on end where it's just a flow of synchronicity? Like truly amazing. In one of the interviews I did with Arno, I just watched it last night actually. I was grilling him about it. I said, one of the things that the people I work with, that they often question is like, how do we know when we're listening to innate or to our inner wisdom versus our ego? And his response, he said, well, it's quite easy. When you're in innate, you're going to hit a flow state. You'll have synchronicity. When you're in ego, you're going to hit walls and resistance and detours, right? At the opportunity as we're preparing for the Masterpiece Training Camp, that was in St. Catharines. We had about 3 days of preparation beforehand and maybe 2 days afterwards. And I got to drive around town in my little 300 ZX sports car. And I mean, we were back and forth through the town. And for those 3 days, I don't know if we had a red flag. I mean, it was just like the signpost. They knew we were coming. Green light, keep going. You're good. Yeah, green light, keep going. And we got to go over to Conrad and Henny's and pick up a key there. And we'd show up at their place just as Henny was arriving, like within a second. I mean, when we get in sync with our innate, we're getting in sync with the larger rhythms of life. And there's this tapestry that we're part of that's moving through us. Truly amazing. And I had the opportunity of experiencing it with them. Another piece that grew through Arno was his vision of a cafe of life. And the cafe of life was the chiropractic centers and for the students that ended up happening all around the world. There's hundreds of them now around the world. And the vision then was that we were serving life. Okay, it was a cafe. We were serving life. It was very vibrant, wonderful music, much like you get to experience here. And the Lifehouse is actually a cafe of life. We just call it the Lifehouse. But it really built off this vision of what a cafe of life was. And here we are here. This is 2009. Arno actually had the opportunity of we had the opportunity of hosting Arno here twice in Nanaimo. Helen, I think you came up. Yeah, you had the opportunity to fill the convention center. We were doing the pictures afterwards. Oh, we gotta pose like we're inmates, right?
Yeah.
That's inside here, right? So yeah, we're posing as inmates. We need to stand forward with that. I mean, is that a beautiful picture or what? It was just like, yeah, oh my God, so good, so good. And as we're putting together these pictures, I mean, some of them just brought me to tears. This one up here, here's Arno, which I love dearly. And then you missed that photo, but you're recognizing a number of your colleagues there. These are fellow colleagues that I've had the opportunity of serving in Nanaimo for over the last 20 years. Dr. Sean Thomas, Dr. Ingrid, who's passed away now, Dr. Karen Mallory, Dr. Rob Rowe, and on the right, Dr. Jay Tomke, and of course, Dr. Helen was there, but she was out in the lobby doing something else. So anyways, and we're of course doing the famous high pie, right? As chiropractors, right? Helen, high pie? Yeah, we give high pies as chiropractors. Do you guys know what a high pie is? Do you know what your pisiform is? Pisiform is one of the smallest bones. Well, it's actually not. Yeah, bone is right. Yeah, it's a pisiform bone. It's this tiny little bone right here. Can you feel that right on so underneath your pinky and your wrist here? There's that little bone there. And this little bone is just so perfectly placed by our creator that it allows for the perfect contact spot for chiropractors to adjust the atlas of the cervical spine. In fact, many of you have been toggled by my pisiform. Yeah, and it's a beautiful adjustment, and it really lines up over my heart, right? And then our role as a chiropractor again is for the impulse not to come from me, but to come through me, right? And so it's my job to open to source and just be that conduit. Arno would call it being a hollow bone. That our role as healers was to hollow ourselves out. So we didn't have the static, all of the milieu of, whatever relationship not going right. No, we were to clear that before we served, so that we could be a hollow bone, a servant to bring through the energy. Yeah, and a few other events that are known. You can check out this video on the right. We just sent that out. That was back in 7 years ago, so 2017. I did a series called An 8 to an 8, and Arno showed up on that. Another event he did in 2011. These are all recorded as well. I do encourage you to look at some of his message. His book as well. It's phenomenally written. And we do have a couple of his books around if you're interested in going home with one. When we ordered the box of books from him, Heather and Liam brought, when I was adjusting in this room, the box of books arrived. And then Heather was like, oh, we got the books. And she carried a think one of the books or the box of books.
Just
Into
one,
This
yeah.
Ring, I could feel the energy in the room up level just from the book. Okay. I'm astute to that sort of, especially when I'm in this environment. Phenomenal, folks. You know, where it's encoded, and in Donnie's book too, there's downloads in them. You're reading it, and you'll pause, and you're gonna feel. I feel vibration, energy coming through it. It's pretty cool. And one of the best things about the book is it's really easy to read. It only takes about 10 hours to read or in your own pace. But I think in our modern world, we've gotten so used to like listening to podcasts and whatnot. My brain isn't as used to reading books for some people anyways. You know, I gave it to a colleague of mine, Rosa, and she said, "Oh, so great, it was so easy to read." And it reads with the same kind of tenacity that he lived his life. Arno, when he was walking somewhere, he was walking somewhere. He was getting there because he wanted to get there, right? And the book reads that same way. There's not a wasted word in the book. You know, everything is on point, succinct, wonderful book to read. And then, yeah, a year ago, we had the opportunity, Arno and Jane invited us down into their home. Heather and I said yes. Love to come visit you guys. We went down and had a chance to spend some time with them. And this is him meditating in the chair. One of my fond memories was we did the Anahata. Am I saying that right? Anahata meditation. The heart meditation. Yeah. And so we did that. We did a number of different meditations together. It was a beautiful time. And we walked on the beach and we chatted, swam. It was wonderful. And we laughed and we laughed and we laughed. We reminisced about Chalet. Yeah, in Loretto. Beautiful town if you get a chance to go down to see Loretto. Then in their town center, you know, one of the things that's unique in Mexico, they don't give like old age security like they do here. They pay their old people to go out and sweep the streets. The town is spotless. It's so beautiful. Okay. Everybody is connected. Hola, hola. They sing to everybody in the streets. Yeah. Hey guys. Oh, great to see you. You come back to Canada and it's like, hard to make eye contact with people. And if you do, they kind of think you're weird. Oh my goodness. So
Speaking of big eyes.
there we are. Oh, we used to have fun. We did enjoy tequila together too once in a while. Yeah. There we are, touching lives and building connections. Beautiful. Yeah, great time. That's over so that was the bay of Jacques Cousteau. We love the bay. It was the most crystal blue waters. The wonderful snorkeling through there. Yeah. And then the morning routine, of which here we are. I'm on holidays. In some of the days, but most of the days I got up and did the morning routine. He was still doing the morning routine every morning. Sunrise. This is up at the rooftop palace in his home, on the trellis of his home. And so there we are doing the morning routine. And he was a man of discipline. Oh boy. You know, it said that in relationship, we're going to align with those who we share values with, right? And then it's also true sometimes in relationship that we'll express the repressed part of the other. Kind of an interesting phenomenon. So me and Arno, I love just discipline. It's something I don't come by naturally. By nature, oh, no. But I love that. I love to be around him because it helps to infuse that on me. And I'll say, you know, well, I'll carry that on. We'll get into this in a bit. And so some pictures here of his beautiful wife, Jane. What a smile again. Fantastic. Now, this lifetime, Jane wasn't able, she had a thyroid condition and she wasn't actually able to carry babies. They tried, they like 6 or more miscarriages. So they ended up adopting 2 children. They birthed them off of Boeing 747. that was flown from North Korea. And so this is Boo in the top right. Unfortunately, we don't have a picture of Tanya, but that's his son Boo, who's now a chiropractor in Spain. And beautiful man, Boo. And so that's their family. Whew. And then he passed. Yeah, I got word just, a few weeks before knowing that he was going to pass and had an opportunity to write in my final words to him. And, I certainly had a lot of thanks, a lot of appreciation. And this is Jake America, a beautiful man. I had the opportunity of sharing hotel room with Jay at one of the Masterpiece training camps. And this is a post that Jay wrote. Rest in peace, my friend. You were a samurai and warrior right to the end. He left his body at 7:21 and 7:21 on a full moon, total peace with Jane and Boo, holding him. And so, unbeknownst to Arno and Jane, that they were at the crux of a full moon when he passed. They just realized that shortly afterwards. And he died at 7:21 on 7:21. And it turns out the 7:21, the July full moon, I wish I had the actual name for it, but it's a very sacred full moon. It's all around the river and its transcendence. I mean, it's just so perfect. It's outrageous. Just back up for 1 second. I have a little bit more to share there. It's okay. Arno always had impeccable timing. Okay, I mentioned that to you. Green lights, green lights, green lights, right? He would host these workshops, and if you get to the workshop and you're like 2 minutes late, there's like 150 colleagues there. You were up at the front and he's grilling you. You're late. No, you're 2 minutes late. You set your time to our time, now you're 2 minutes late. And then his analogy they go into, which I thought was so brilliant. What do you think it would be if your pacemaker was late by 2 minutes? Your pacemaker doesn't have that opportunity. Why do you get the opportunity? And he was brilliant that way in using natural metaphor. Nature is a great teacher, right? So rather than, having his rules or something like that, no, he turned it back to nature. And nature has these laws of timing, how important timing is to nature. And we are part of that natural flow. And when we're in sync, when we're in the flow, right, that's when we're really tapped into innate. So here we're on 7:21, 7:21. So just before he passed away, Jane and Boo were by his side. And I mean, whew, wow. I gotta tell you, if there's any reason to do your spiritual work, that would be to prepare you for your dying process, your death. Okay? I've had the opportunity of walking with a few different people through their death process. And I'll tell you that can be a horrible experience if you haven't done your work and you've got a whole bunch of unfinished business that you've got to look at over the last hour of your life that you're trying to make amends with people. That's not a good scene, right? But for those who have done the work, the dying process is a beautiful way to go. And it was for Arno. He was able to really release so many of his hard sides, which he did. I want to be mindful that not to paint him in a light that there was nothing wrong with the man. He was a control freak. He was a perfectionist, right? During the Masterpiece training, he was so tight. We joke that you could put a piece of coal up his butt and make diamonds. And in a way, that's what he was. We were all told that he was making into diamonds through his intensity, right? And there was that intensity and that kind of hardness that really dropped away over his final days, and he was left with just the sweet essence of his soul, of his being. And Jane has that to remember, and she's so grateful for the last time with him and the time we spent at home as well, which as we're all preparing for our own deaths, You know, and so we all prepare for that. Do your work now, don't wait till then. And if you have the opportunity, do it at home with your friends and loved ones. What an opportunity. Beautiful. And similar to Sophia, when Arno got word that he was in the last chapter, he had a couple of pretty serious strokes that had happened. And went and talked to the medics and they explained to him their process of opening a brain and don't want to do that. So he realized at that point that his time of service was done. So he walked through that final stage as lifeguarders do, which is where he made the conscious choice that his time was done and he stopped eating, which was his offering. And Sophia took a different off ramp. It was a similar off ramp. She knew her time was done. She didn't want to burden you. Arno was the same. He'd done his time of service, and he was at a point where he was ready to go. And so his way out was to stop eating himself. So in the last final hours, Jane was speaking to him and said, well, how am I gonna know? It's you. How am I gonna know if you come back? Are you gonna come back as like a butterfly? Or like maybe a raven? Jane had a very close connection to the ravens. Heather and I had the opportunity of going to Tofino with them. And we were out in the wilderness, those big trees of Tofino. And Jane was like, I feel the ravens. I'm going to call them in. And just through intention, I kid you not. Did she make the call or just through intention? I think it was just through intention.
All intention.
And then there was like 15 ravens that showed up 4 minutes later. Like, whoa, really cool stuff, man. When you get dialed in, it's all available. It's right there. I think a lot of you are too busy watching YouTube at times. So anyways, how am I going to know it's you? I'm afraid that back as a raven. What do you reply to? 11. 11. And he's gonna appear as 11. So then he got passed, and thus opened the string of synchronicities with 11, which are too numerous to count right now. I'm going to give some story on some of them. Who, when he flew back to Spain, of course, he was like a carousel number 11, and then the baggage claim was number 11, right? And I woke up, I was getting ready this morning, finished my shower, I looked down, and it's 9/11. I'm like, this is too perfect, right? So if you come across 11 in the coming days, that's his essence speaking to you. Next slide. And this is a colleague of mine who is preparing for her Florida chiropractic examining boards. It's actually her third attempt at it. They're tough, the examining boards. Her name's Tracy Norman, actually. So this is a big deal. It's her third time going back to it, right? And so, oh yeah, this is happening when?
November 11th,
November's 11, right? 11/11.
11 in the morning. The address also ends with 11.
Right? And can you imagine going in to write your exam, having that in your background? Right. I mean, too cool, too cool. So, and then here's Jane speaking at a celebration of life in New Jersey, which I had the opportunity of flying up for. That was just a few weeks ago, actually. A lot of you were in touch with that. That was one of the most intense weeks. I think it was probably one. I've had a few very intense weeks in my life. And just a bit of kind of where I was at the time. If you know me well, you know that I've been quite involved around health policy, kind of bigger picture, health delivery, gets into politics. And that's been, I never thought I'd be that involved in. But when policy starts to encroach on my ability to deliver the chiropractic, that's when I start to get involved, and it's become an agency. And so I've gotten really involved with that. And so leading into our provincial election, I was like going at a mania page. Oh my goodness, I've never contributed at such a high level. Heather, it was crazy. And thank you for the sacrifice that you made in helping to keep our home stable through all of that. I know it did have a cost on you too. And it was a huge investment in our ability to be chiropractic. So that was happening leading into the trip, the celebration of life in New Jersey. And so I was like on the fence about whether I'd have the time and energy to make it to New Jersey, but my soul was like, no, you gotta go. So I booked a flight, flew out. So his celebration of life was on the Saturday, which was the day of the election. And so that day was like, I was still getting about 20 signal messages a day, and oh my God, and calls, and I'm like, I want to do that. I want to be your president with Arno, but I was having to do kind of both. And, and so Jane started her speech. Well, she said a couple of things that really stuck with me. One, she said around how his work has continued and how he's quite frustrated right now because some of us aren't listening to him. Right. And then the other thing that she said was that he is now everywhere but his body. Okay. And so me personally, I'm kind of leaving a few pieces here. Maybe 2 weeks before I flew out to New Jersey, I was in a state of just deep introspection. I was in tears. I was looking at my life, myself, maybe, and some of the shortcomings I'm seeing with myself, and really going like, wow, I need to make change here. And his voice came through me, he's like, I can help. I was like, whoa. Okay. And then I received this download of energy. Do you guys get downloads when you experience like energy when it comes through? I don't know if that's an every person phenomenon. I get that sometimes, where it's just like it's encoded information. I don't really like have language for it, other than I feel sensations and like tingling coming through me. And I got this huge download just after he said I can help. It was like, whoa, okay. So I got this big download. And then I go and I listen, and it was just a phenomenal celebration. Cried and I cried and I cried. And I was just exhausted from all my efforts into the election, flying out there, time zones, long flight, workshop, cry. And then I go to bed that night, and I'm just like totally exhausted. I look at my cell phone, look at the results of the election. At that point, it was still a coin toss, right? It didn't really look so good for my perspective, but cry some more. And then, I kid you not, I experienced a massage that evening from Arno as he comforted me. And the smell was there. It was absolutely his hands, and those hands. He totally comforted me. And then the next morning, let me flip the slide. So then the next morning, we had the opportunity of going out to the beach. This is just on the beaches of New Jersey here. And we took a third of his ashes, we put it in a singing bowl, and made sound, and chanted, played his music. And then we're about to bring the singing bowl into water to pour his ashes into the ocean, and somebody stepped back to take this picture. It's like coming right through the center of us, right into Jane. I mean, to try and choreograph a photo like that, I mean, you just can't do it. You can't make this stuff up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the man is everywhere but his body, right? And you can just go back to the next one too. And then as I was putting together the slideshow, I was looking at the cover of this book and then this image. I was just like, oh, is that cool or what? Truly amazing, right? We'll just flip back for a second. As humans, we tend to get attached to form. By form, I mean the body he lived in, right? And when we're attached to that form, then there's a loss, because I'm never going to be able to interact with that form again. But the reality is, his spirit is immortal. His essence is immortal. I actually have a closer relationship with him now than I did when he was alive. True. How do you open up that door? For me, I want to just share that with you. Some of you may already have that door open. Maybe you have a really sweet connection with Sophia still. Me too. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And maybe some of you would like to have that connection with somebody who's passed. So, what works for me, when I'm thinking of him, I'm not thinking about the form. I'm tapping into his essence. There's a difference there, right? When I'm thinking about his form, there's this physicality to it. Oh, and it's gone, and that there's an identification with that. When I soften my senses and just tune into a broader sense of Arno and his essence, I can ask him questions. I'll hear his voice back. I'll get his guidance. I'm able to, at this point, kind of access or bring in qualities of his that I didn't have access to before. That makes sense, like discipline. It's pretty trippy how life works. And I wanted to leave that with you as we celebrate his life. And may that open something for you too, as you relate to those informed and those maybe who aren't informed anymore. The door is there open. What I do know is those on the other side, angels, whatnot, we have free will. We have choice as human beings. They are not necessarily going to swoop in and save you. They're not going to impress necessarily impart their will on you. But you have to open and ask for help, ask for guidance. And if you open that door, as sovereign beings, you open the door first, then they can come in and make that contact. Make sense to you? Yeah. So that first step is huge. I think sometimes people are too hung up in their own grieving and they're holding on to that grief and they're not able to open the door to a different connection that might be there for you. So, okay. Yeah, and then our final slide. So rest in peace, dear friend and mentor. Your spirit soars freely, guiding us all with your love and wisdom, even left a lasting legacy. And his legacy is, it's through me. Next time when you get adjusted, you can just take a moment and appreciate Arno's essence and what has helped me be who I am. Because I wouldn't be here today without him. So, I don't necessarily want to be the only one speaking today. I wanted to open the floor. If there's anybody tuning in from Zoom land, I don't know if James on there, I think his wife is tuning in today, or if anybody else wanted to take just a moment up here. If you're moved by the moment, come and speak. It can just be on life. I mean, Arno would just love that. Or love, or relationship. If you have anything that you're feeling called to say, please, now would be your time. Or if you did want to say something towards Arno, you're welcome to do that as well. So I will step aside. Is there anybody who'd like a moment? Okay.
Well, I thought it was going to be from the chair.
Oh, okay. You're welcome to offer it from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I see that 721 and 721. When I add them together, there's 10 and 10, and alone they're 1 and 1. So there's that 11.
Right.
So I noticed that. And then when you're talking about connecting with Sophia, I'm in Country Grocer and I went, oh, there's our favorite cashier. I have. And she's graceful, kind, and alive. And also, you know, we go into her role whenever we see her on one place at that line.
Yeah.
So, I saw her. And she was always, I was able to share with her about how I'm doing with Sophia's death. And wow, just at the check.
That's amazing.
That was really beautiful.
Right.
So I always take the receipt. So when I go to the door, I paid too much or I paid too little, they forgot, I can let them know. So as I walk out, doors open up and I look at the receipt. I was in lane number 1. I was the 111th customer. And the time on the checkout was 11.
No kidding.
Wow.
Wow.
And she was, one number that was different was 5, and that was Sophie's favorite number, 5 elements.
Okay.
And as you say, that sensation, walking out the door, and when I see that, and this whole energy is your friend.
Mm. There we go. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing.
I knew she was there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I don't have to try to figure it out. Like, yeah, I don't know what it looks like.
Mhm.
She does.
Right. Beautiful. Beautiful. Mm. Okay. Yeah, I really like this. It's great. Thank you.
He was just he is still such a spectacular person. So I'm so glad that each of you came to learn more about him. I didn't know Arno as well. I felt like I was a bit of the tag along of the 4 of us. But there was this really, when I was reflecting on it the other day, there was just this great, comfortable silence that he and I could have when we were the 4 of us or having a meal. And I was laughing when Norm was talking about how controlling Arno was. Because for me, growing up as, you know, a prairie youngin, it was like just by default, you would always clear dishes or help in the kitchen as best you could. But as his French background was, Arno was very, very strict and you couldn't get in his kitchen. And so I had to laugh that by the end of our trip to Mexico last February with them, I feel like I won him over and was more available to help him in the kitchen. And he was like, okay, yeah, I'll let you help me now. And then with other kitchen times, certainly a great memory was when Arno and Norm were chefing it up in Tofino. And, you know, coming from a very worldly traveler and having Arno saying those are the best oysters I've ever had, going back the next day to get more was just a really neat way to celebrate the richness and the indulgence of making the most of our time here. And so certainly, though I didn't know Arno that well throughout the stretch of time of knowing Norm, I do feel more connected to Arno now since he's passed. And the day we found out on July 21st, I often do beach combing and walks, and I had a really, really strong connection with just how free and how liberated his spirit was. There's nothing to be sad about. It's just this is the flow, this is that next evolution of Arno. And so when Jane says he's getting frustrated because we're not listening, I just want to like really lean into, okay, Arno, listening for more messages. So take that with you, and yeah, tap into the book and the videos we have, because he's just chock full of all sorts of just beautiful insights and universal healing principles. And yeah, thank you all for being here.
Great. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say from here, so
Yeah, go for it.
yeah, such an infectious smile.
Yeah.
So powerful, and the joy. But we also have the opportunity to take a part of his mantle. I believe still, it's still available. I've taken from my friends who passed, but I believe his mantle is still freely giving, and I can feel that. And it's an opportunity even for your loved ones when they pass to take that part of their mantle and carry that forward and carry on with their life and spirits, but project it onto others as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's my intention. And I invite you all as well to carry on a bit of our own in your own life. And so his book is called The Cafe of Life, and then it's called And the Mosquito Principle, which I thought was a rather long time for a book, but it's actually a perfect time for his book. You've been introduced to the Cafe of Life and what that was about, which was originally about the offices, but chiropractic centers. But as you read the book, you begin to explore more about the web of life and the orchestra of life within. He covers in great detail both the sides of birth and also dying as well. There's some wonderful stories around the dying process, which in our culture I feel is just so maybe minimalized for a lot of folks, and it's something that I think we can all do better in approaching and discussing and preparing for. I think it really is the doorway to truly living when we embrace our own death as well. And then the second part, and the mosquito principle, was borrowed from the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama states, if you think that you're too small to make a difference, try spending a night with a mosquito. Okay, and I want to leave you all with that. It's easy for us to look at Arno and, oh, yeah, he taught thousands of chiropractors and traveled the world. Yeah, but we all have the potential to make a difference, right? And whether that difference is just a little bit, we can make that difference. One of the things that he taught us which I still hold to today, we saw it earlier, who we are as a human being precedes who we are as a chiropractor. He gave us about an hour-long lecture about the best behavior in public bathrooms, washrooms, right? And what he would expect of us. And so one element was the amount of paper that most people use when they go in. He said, stop it. All you need is one piece of paper. You don't need to kill more trees, right? Your hands are a little extra wet, just do this, get on, right? Okay, so yeah, I was being too, fruit, and what's the word, too abundant. I was using too much paper towel, so I'm much more intentional with my paper towel. And then he said, the second part with it was, always have the intention to leave the washroom a little bit nicer than when you entered it. Okay.
Weak in some places.
Well, that was the caveat. He said, you don't have to clean the whole thing because it would take a week, right? And that's because that would be silly. If, I've got to spend 20 minutes in this bathroom, it's horrible. But it's amazing in 30 seconds at the difference you can make in a public bathroom. Like, no kidding. I walk in a bathroom often and I'm like, the paper towels, and there's 4 of them on the end of the garbage, right? People just kind of throw them there. And then there's water splashed and the soap over here. And I just take my hand with my paper towel, grab those paper towels, wipe down, clean the soap, all goes in the trash bin. And in 15 seconds, I look back and I'm like, it's just a little nicer. I'm not scrubbing the floor or, doing anything like that. That wasn't what he was asking. But just to leave it a little bit nicer, which we all can do. That does not require a degree in chiropractic degree, right? It's just us as human beings leaving the world a little bit better. And so, that's my challenge for myself today and moving forward. And I'll leave you with that as well. In what little ways can you make your world better? Whether it's holding a door open for somebody and doing a pay it forward moment or making a public washroom. That's the world that I want to live in. And so, thank you, Arno, for sharing that with me. Okay. Thank you for your time. And, yeah, fantastic. That's really sweet. Thanks for your attendance. Thanks for your presence.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, great.
And thanks, Heather, for holding the space.
Yes, You're welcome. That's right. I just kept calling in Arnell. He's just gonna help us. And thanks for the people that tuned in. And we will have a recording of this available later on.
Thanks for tuning in Zoom world. All right.